He had the world at his feet, billions in the bank, power in the boardroom, and a life of absolute control. But when Aaron pulls his blacked-out luxury sedan into a quiet, chip-paint neighborhood, he's about to realize that the one thing he actually needed was the one thing he let walk away 3 years ago. He's come back looking for closure, but what he finds on Aaliyah's porch will shatter his polished CEO persona forever. There isn't just one ghost from his past waiting for him. There are 4 tiny, identical faces staring back. Get ready for a story of pride, betrayal, and the high price of a second chance. The gravel crunched under the tires of a blacked-out luxury sedan. It didn't belong in this quiet neighborhood of trimmed hedges and chipped porch paint. Aaliyah watched from the kitchen window, her heart performing a slow, heavy thud against her ribs. She knew that car. She knew the way the door opened, deliberate, powerful, and demanding attention. Aaron stepped out. He looked exactly the same, yet entirely different. His suit was charcoal gray, tailored to perfection. His jaw was set in that familiar, stubborn line. It had been 3 years. 3 years of silence. 3 years of rebuilding a life from the wreckage he left behind. Aaliyah didn't move. She felt a small, sticky hand tug at her leggings. "Mama? Who's the man?" Aiden asked. He was the cautious one, his eyes wide and dark, just like the man walking up the driveway. Aaliyah scooped up Abigail, who was already reaching for her hip. "Just a visitor, sweetie. Stay by me." A heavy knock echoed through the small house. Aaliyah took a breath, adjusted Abigail's weight, and opened the door. Aaron stood there. He looked ready to deliver a boardroom presentation, but the words died in his throat the moment the door swung wide. He didn't look at Aaliyah first. His eyes dropped to Abigail. Then they moved to Aiden, who was hiding half behind Aaliyah's leg. "Aaliyah," Aaron managed to say. His voice was smooth, like expensive bourbon, but there was a crack in the foundation. "Hi. I know this is unexpected." Aaliyah leaned against the doorframe. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She simply existed in the space he had once occupied so loudly. "What are you doing here, Aaron?" "I've been thinking," he started, his gaze flickering back to the children. "About us. About how things ended. I wanted to see if there was a path back." "Mama, Abe took my dinosaur." "Erilyn is hitting." A high-pitched scream erupted from the living room. Aaliyah didn't flinch. She just turned her head slightly. "1 second, Abe." "Erilyn, use your words." Aaron's face went pale. The math was starting to happen in his head. He looked at Abigail. He looked at Aiden. Then he looked past Aaliyah into the hallway where 2 more identical faces peered around the corner. Abe and Erilyn. 4 of them. The silence on the porch was deafening. The sleek car at the curb looked ridiculous next to the plastic tricycle overturned in the grass. "Aaliyah," Aaron whispered. The polished CEO persona was gone. He looked like he'd been struck by lightning. "How many are there?" 4, Aaron. "They're quadruplets," Aaliyah said. Her voice was flat. No anger. No joy. Just the truth. Aaron stepped forward, his hand reaching out instinctively before he pulled it back. He looked at Abe, who was clutching a plastic T-Rex. He looked at Erilyn, who had a smudge of peanut butter on her nose. Are they mine?" Aaliyah felt a cold spark of the old fire. Even now, it was about his claim. His property. His legacy. "They are 3 years old, Aaron." "You do the math," Aaliyah replied. Aaron leaned against the porch railing. He looked like he might be sick. "You didn't tell me." 3 years, Aaliyah? "You kept 4 children from me." Aaliyah tightened her grip on Abigail. "I told you I was pregnant the day I signed the papers. You were looking at a merger contract. You told me it was a lot, and that we'd talk about it after the deal closed." "The deal closed, Aaron. You never called." "I thought you meant." "I didn't think it meant this." Aaron's voice rose, losing its practiced control. "For kids. I'm a father to 4 children, and I'm just finding out on a porch in the suburbs." "You're finding out because you finally showed up," Aaliyah said. "And now that you have, I need you to leave. It's nap time." Aaron blocked the door with his arm as she tried to close it. His eyes were wild now, searching her face for a trace of the woman who used to worship him. "You can't just send me away. We need to talk about this. We need to discuss arrangements, support, my rights." "I'll think about it," Aaliyah cut him off. "You'll think about it?" Aaron stepped onto the threshold. Aiden shied away, burying his face in Aaliyah's leg. Aaron saw the fear in his son's eyes and froze. "I just found out I have a family, Aaliyah. I'm not going anywhere." Aaliyah looked him dead in the eye. "You haven't been here for 3 years, Aaron. Another day won't kill you. Move your hand off my door. Aaron looked at his hand, then at the 4 tiny versions of himself staring back with confusion and mistrust. Slowly, he stepped back. This isn't over, he warned, though his voice lacked its usual bite. It started a long time ago, Aaliyah said. You're just late to the meeting. She closed the door and locked it. Through the wood, she heard the engine of the expensive car roar to life. She leaned her forehead against the door and let out a breath she'd been holding for 3 years. Behind her, Abe tugged at her shirt. Mama, is the man coming back? Aaliyah looked at her 4 miracles. I don't know, baby, but we're going to be okay either way. Aaron gripped the leather steering wheel of his parked car until his knuckles turned white. He didn't start the engine. He couldn't. His mind was a chaotic mess of numbers and memories that didn't add up. For children, quadruplets, 3 years old. The math was simple, but it felt like a physical blow to his chest. Aaliyah had been pregnant during their divorce. She had moved out with nothing but her essentials and a stone-faced lawyer while carrying 4 of his children. He hadn't known. He closed his eyes and tried to reach back into the fog of 3 years ago. A memory flickered. Aaliyah's voice in their old apartment, soft but urgent. She had said she needed to tell him something important. Aaron winced. He remembered his own response. He'd asked if it could wait. He had calls to make. He was in the middle of the Whitmore acquisition, a deal that had eventually failed anyway, but had consumed 6 months of his life. He had been playing high-stakes mental chess, and he'd left no room on the board for her. He looked out the window at the house. It was small and modest. The lawn needed mowing. A plastic playset sat in the backyard, its primary colors faded by the sun. This was where his children lived. Toys on the porch. A handmade, crooked wreath on the door. He tried to imagine Aaliyah alone with 4 infants. How did one person even manage that? 4 mouths to feed. For sleep schedules. Constant care. He had been paying child support, sure. His accountant had set it up based on a legal formula, and Aaron had signed the papers without a second thought. He just assumed she was fine. The word fine felt like a recorded insult now. Aaron pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. He stopped at his lawyer's name. He wanted to scream. Why didn't you tell me? But he knew the answer. It was likely buried in the hundreds of pages of legal text he had trusted his team to handle while he chased another billion. Movement in the front window caught his eye. A small, dark-eyed face peered out at the strange car. Aaron's own eyes stared back at him from a toddler's face. He turned the key, started the engine, and drove away. Underscore. For Aaliyah, the next 3 days were a blur of the usual chaos. She didn't know if Aaron was planning a legal war or if he had simply decided the complication of 4 kids wasn't worth his time. Both options felt equally possible. She kept to her routine. Breakfast was a battlefield of spilled milk and tears. Then came the choreographed dance of brushing teeth and wiping faces. She managed the park trips and library story hours with military precision. By the afternoon stretch, she was always running on fumes, but she didn't stop. Dinner, baths, stories, songs. Abigail needed her stuffed rabbit. Abe needed the night light at a specific angle. Erilyn demanded exactly 3 forehead kisses. Aiden would only settle if Aaliyah sat in total silence for 5 minutes. By the time she finished cleaning up and prepping for the next day, there was no room in her head for Aaron's midlife crisis. On the 4th day, her phone buzzed. She picked up while folding a tiny, grass-stained shirt. Aaliyah, it's Aaron. His voice wasn't polished anymore. He sounded like a man who hadn't slept in 72 hours. Hi, Aaliyah said, sitting on the edge of the couch. I'd like to talk, Aaron said. About everything. Aaliyah looked around her living room. There were toys everywhere. A stain on the carpet she couldn't get out. Laundry piles that never seemed to shrink. This life was messy and exhausting, but it was hers. Okay, she said. When is good for you? Aaron asked. Aaliyah almost laughed. When was never. Her life was owned by 4 small people. It would have to be while I have the kids, Aaliyah told him. I don't have childcare right now. I could come to the house, Aaron suggested. No, Aaliyah snapped. The word was firm. She wouldn't let him into her sanctuary. She wouldn't let his shadow touch the walls of the home she had built from scratch. The park. Riverside Park. Tomorrow at 10. I'll bring the kids. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I'll be there," Aaron said. Aaliyah hung up and looked at the shirt in her hands. She had spent 3 years building a world where Aaron didn't exist. Now, the gates were open, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for the storm he was bringing with him. Underscore. The next morning, the sun was bright, but the air at Riverside Park was cool. Aaliyah unloaded the double stroller, then unbuckled the other two from their car seats. It was a feat of strength and patience she performed every day, but today, her hands felt heavy. She saw his car before she saw him. It was a sleek, black SUV that looked completely out of place next to the minivans and rusted sedans in the lot. Aaron was standing by the park gate, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her car. He looked terrified. As she pushed the stroller toward him, the kids were already chirping. Abe wanted the swings. Erilyn was pointing at a dog. Aiden was dragging his feet, and Abigail was humming a song under her breath. Aaron watched them approach like he was watching a tidal wave. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stared at the 4 small humans who shared his DNA. "You're late," Aaron said, though his voice had no bite. He was checking his watch just to have something to do with his hands. "I have 4 toddlers, Aaron," Aaliyah replied, stopping the stroller a few feet away. "Being only 5 minutes late is a miracle." She locked the wheels and turned to face him. She didn't offer a smile. She didn't offer a hand. She just stood there, a mother protecting her brood. "They look healthy," Aaron managed to say. He looked at Aiden, who was currently trying to eat a piece of mulch. "Is he supposed to do that?" "Aiden, put that down," Aaliyah said calmly. She looked back at Aaron. "They're fine. They've been fine for 3 years." "Aaliyah, I want to make this right," Aaron said, taking a step forward. "The money, the housing. I can provide so much more than this." Aaliyah felt a spark of heat in her chest. "This isn't about your bank account, Aaron. You didn't even know their names until you did the math in your head 3 days ago. I want to know them now," he insisted. "Do you?" Aaliyah stepped closer, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous hiss. "Do you want to know which one cries when the wind is too loud? Do you want to know which one won't eat anything green? Or do you just want to feel better about the fact that you ignored me when I tried to tell you I was pregnant?" Aaron flinched. The golden boy of the corporate world had no rebuttal. "I'm not here to take them away," Aaron said quietly. I can't just walk away now that I know." "You walked away once," Aaliyah reminded him. "You just didn't realize how many people you were leaving behind." Just then, Erilyn let out a piercing shriek. She had tripped on the pavement and skinned her knee. Before Aaron could even react, Aaliyah was on the ground, scooping the little girl into her arms, whispering comfort and checking the wound. Aaron stood there, useless. He watched the efficiency of her love. He watched how the other 3 gathered around her, a tight-knit unit that he was completely outside of. He realized then that he wasn't just a stranger to his children. He was a stranger to the woman he had once called his wife. "I'll pay for a nanny," Aaron said suddenly. "A team of them. You shouldn't have to do this alone." Aaliyah looked up from Erilyn's knee, her eyes cold. "I'm not alone, Aaron. I have them, and they have me. We've done the hard part without you. If you want to be in their lives, it's going to be on my terms. No teams of nannies. No checks to make your guilt go away." "Then what?" Aaron asked, looking desperate. Aaliyah stood up, holding a sniffling Erilyn. "You start by learning how to push a stroller. And you start by admitting that you failed them." Aaron looked at the double stroller. It looked more complicated than a hostile takeover. He reached out, his expensive cufflink catching the light, and gripped the handle. "Show me," he said. The playground hummed with the high-pitched energy of a dozen toddlers, but Aaliyah only had eyes for 4 of them. She pushed the massive quadruple stroller with a strength she hadn't possessed 3 years ago. Her muscles were lean, her movements efficient. She didn't look like the fragile woman Aaron remembered. Aaron stood by a weathered wooden bench. He looked out of place in his brand-new jeans and crisp t-shirt. He looked like a man trying very hard to appear casual. When he saw her, he stood up straight, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. "Hi," Aaron said. His voice was sandpaper. His eyes didn't go to Aaliyah first. They darted toward the 4 small children clinging to the stroller. Aaliyah didn't smile. She reached down and clicked the brakes on the wheels. "Hi, Aaron." She unbuckled Abe and Aiden. The two boys surged forward like water from a broken dam. Erilyn and Abigail were already halfway to the slide, their small sneakers kicking up wood chips. Aaliyah didn't chase them. She stood where she could see every exit, every climbing frame, and every swing. It was a calculated stance. Do they always move like that? Aaron asked, his voice breathless. Like what? Aaliyah asked. Like they're trying to be in 4 places at once, Aaron muttered. They're 3 years old, Aaron, Aaliyah said. She sat on the edge of the bench, leaving a massive physical gap between them. Everything is the most important thing they've ever seen. They don't have time to wait. Aaron sat down slowly. He looked at his shoes, then at the kids, then finally at Aaliyah. I didn't know. About the pregnancy. I know you said you told me, but I genuinely don't remember. I've been trying to figure out how I could have forgotten something like that. Aaliyah watched Abigail reach the top of the slide. She didn't flinch. You didn't forget, Aaron. You heard it and decided it wasn't urgent. You told me it was a lot, and then you went right back to your spreadsheets. You put my life in the same category as a plumbing bill. Something to handle after the important work was done. Aaron flinched as if she'd slapped him. That's not. I wouldn't have. I'm not interested in rewriting history, Aaliyah interrupted. Her voice was flat, devoid of the screaming rage she'd carried for years. You asked why I didn't tell you. I did. You just didn't make space to hear it. That is what happened. Mama, push me. Abigail's voice cut through the tension. Aaliyah stood up immediately. She walked to the swings without looking back to see if Aaron followed. He did, trailing behind her like a ghost. Aaliyah gripped the black rubber of the swing and gave Abigail a steady, practiced push. So you just left? Aaron asked from behind her. You left while you were pregnant with 4 babies? I left because staying was destroying me, Aaliyah said. She watched Abigail's hair fly back in the wind. The pregnancy just made the exit sign glow brighter. I couldn't be married to you and still be a person, Aaron. I was disappearing. That's not fair, Aaron snapped. Aaliyah stopped the swing. She turned around to face him, her hand still steady on the rope. Maybe not, but it's true. You were physically in the apartment every night while I was on bed rest. You paid for the doctors. You checked in between your board meetings. You were there, Aaron, but you weren't there. She took a step toward him. You never asked how I felt. You never sat with me just to sit. You treated my body like a project to manage and those babies like a deadline to meet. I didn't need your solutions. I needed you. The actual you. Erilyn ran up, her face red from sprinting. Mama, the girl over there says I can't use the blue bucket. Aaliyah knelt down instantly. She tucked a stray hair behind Erilyn's ear. Did you ask her if you could trade for the red one? Erilyn shook her head. Go try that. If she still says no, come back and we'll find a new game, okay? Erilyn nodded, her eyes bright again, and sprinted back into the fray. The entire interaction took seconds. When Aaliyah stood up, she caught Aaron staring at her with an expression she couldn't name. What? Aaliyah asked. You're really good at that, Aaron whispered. Being a mom. You knew exactly what she needed. Aaliyah felt a sharp, cold twist in her gut. I had to learn. I didn't have a choice. It was just me and them in a tiny apartment with no sleep and 4 crying mouths. If I didn't figure it out, no one was coming to save us. Aaron's face crumbled. The billionaire facade finally cracked. I should have been there. Aaliyah, I'm so sorry. For not hearing you. For missing 3 years. I want to make it right. Aaliyah looked at him. She saw the regret. It looked real, but it didn't feel like enough. Why are you here, Aaron? Why now? Why after 3 years of silence? Aaron opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at the playground, searching for a script that didn't exist. I've been thinking about us. About how it ended. I realized I never got closure. I wanted to apologize so I could move on. Aaliyah felt a bitter laugh bubble up in her throat. She whistled, a sharp, 2-tone sound. All 4 children stopped in their tracks and ran toward her. It was a synchronized movement that spoke of years of discipline. Snack time, Aaliyah announced. She reached into the bottom of the stroller and pulled out a bag. With the speed of a card dealer, she handed out juice boxes and crackers. She wiped Aiden's nose and swapped Abigail's juice for Erilyn's. Aaron watched her as if she were performing a miracle. Once the kids were occupied with their crackers, Aaliyah turned back to the man who owned half the city but didn't know his own children's favorite flavors. You came for closure, Aaliyah said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You came because you were uncomfortable with being the bad guy in your own head. You wanted to rewrite the ending so you could sleep better in that penthouse. That's not fair, Aaliyah. I care. Do you? Aaliyah stepped closer. Did you ask once in 3 years how I was doing? Did you look at the child support checks and wonder why the numbers were so high? Did you check in because you missed me? Or did you only show up because your ego finally got bruised? You don't want a family, Aaron. You want a clean conscience. And I don't give those out for free. Aaron stood by the wrought iron fence of the park, his designer suit looking out of place against the backdrop of plastic slides and wood chips. He watched the 4 children playing. He tried to match their faces to the names he'd heard Aaliyah say just minutes ago. He couldn't. The realization hit him harder than any corporate loss. He turned back to Aaliyah, his voice weak. He told her he thought she wanted space. Aaliyah sat back on the park bench. She looked exhausted. She told him he didn't stay away because she needed space. She said he stayed away because it was easier. She explained that as long as he didn't ask, he didn't have to know. He could just tell himself she was fine and move on. Aaliyah's shoulders slumped. She had lived this scene 1,000 times during their marriage. She would try to make him see. He would deflect. He would reframe the truth until it fit his narrative. She told him she didn't have the energy for it anymore. She asked him what he actually wanted. For the first time, the polished mask slipped from Aaron's face. He looked confused. He admitted he didn't know. He said he thought he wanted to apologize. He mentioned wanting to see if they could be a family again. Aaliyah cut him off. Her voice wasn't mean, just tired. She told him he didn't want a family. He wanted the idea of one. He wanted the story where he was the hero who came back and made things right. Aaron bristled. He said that wasn't fair. Aaliyah challenged him. She asked if he even knew their names. Aaron went still. Aaliyah pointed out that he had been there for an hour. She had said the names multiple times. She asked if he knew which child was which. Aaron's eyes darted toward the playground. He searched for a clue, a resemblance, a memory. There was nothing. Aaliyah said it was okay. She reminded him he just met them. But that was her point. He didn't know them. He didn't know her. She told him he couldn't just slot himself into a life he had no part in building. Aaron asked if he should just stay away and pretend he didn't have kids. Aaliyah shook her head. She told him he had a legal right to be in their lives. She said if he wanted a real relationship, she wouldn't stop him. They deserved a father who showed up. But she warned him she wouldn't manage it for him. She wouldn't help him feel better about missing 3 years. That was his work to do. Little Aiden wandered back to the bench. He leaned against Aaliyah's knee. She ran her fingers through his hair. Aiden leaned into her touch. Aaron watched the moment with grief in his eyes. He said he wanted to try. He said he wanted to be their father for real. Aaliyah agreed. She said they could figure out a schedule and start slow. Aaron stepped closer. He asked about us. Aaliyah met his eyes. She told him there was no us. Not anymore. Aaron tried to argue. He said they could try. Aaliyah spoke his name the way she spoke to the children when a request was impossible. She told him she didn't love him. She hadn't loved him for a long time. She said she didn't want to be the woman she had to be to stay married to him. Aaron processed the words. He realized there was no room to negotiate. He asked if it was just co-parenting. Aaliyah confirmed that was all she was offering. Aaron shoved his hands in his pockets. He looked at the park one last time. He said he was sorry for everything. He told her he knew he couldn't fix it, but he needed her to know he meant it. Aaliyah just said, I know. She didn't offer forgiveness. She didn't offer comfort. She didn't let him be the hero. She only gave him honesty. Aaron left 20 minutes later. His attempts to talk to the kids were awkward. They were polite, but wary. They treated him like a stranger who smiled too much. Aaliyah watched his car disappear. She gathered her children and went home. That night, Aaliyah sat at her kitchen table. The house was quiet. She drank her tea and felt the weight of the day. She had stood her ground. She hadn't shrunk or made things comfortable for him. It felt like a victory. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Aaron. He thanked her for letting him see the kids. He promised to do better. Aaliyah read the text twice. She set the phone down without replying. She didn't need promises. She needed action. Her life would move on regardless. Tomorrow there would be laundry and breakfast and dishes. She would be there for it all because it was her life. That was enough. The weeks followed a new pattern. Aaron showed up. He wasn't perfect. He canceled twice for work meetings. But more often than not, he came. He started small. Saturday mornings with one child at a time. Pancakes with Abigail. The bookstore with Erilyn. He took Aiden to the aquarium 3 times before realizing the boy only asked for it because it felt safe. Aaliyah watched from a distance. She didn't coach him. She didn't offer tips. It was his learning curve. He started to change. He kept extra clothes in his car for spills. He learned Abe wouldn't eat if people watched him. He learned Erilyn needed a warning before it was time to leave. He learned Aiden needed to hold a hand instead of hearing a speech. Aaliyah hadn't expected him to stay. She thought he would realize how much work kids were and fade away. It would have been easier if he had. She wouldn't have to deal with the schedule or the complex feeling of watching her kids smile at him. But Aaron kept coming. The kids started to accept him. He wasn't their world. Aaliyah was still the gravity that held them together. But Aaron became a presence. He was the man who showed up on Saturdays. The grocery store was Aaliyah's personal battlefield. It was a Tuesday morning, and the fluorescent lights hummed with a clinical coldness. Aaliyah navigated the aisles with the precision of a general, her cart overflowing with cereal boxes, fruit snacks, and the chaotic energy of 4 toddlers. Abe hung off the side of the metal basket, his small sneakers dragging against the linoleum. Erilyn was busy lecturing Abigail about why they couldn't have the blue juice, while Aiden simply stared at a display of paper towels with intense focus. Aaliyah reached for a box of organic oats when her heart skipped a beat. A few feet away, near the artisan breads, stood a woman who didn't belong in this world of sticky fingers and diaper bags. It was Shanice, Aaron's girlfriend. Aaliyah knew her face from a late-night moment of weakness on social media months ago. Shanice was tall, polished, and radiated the kind of effortless beauty that usually cost a fortune in upkeep. She was draped in a trench coat that probably cost more than Aaliyah's first car. Shanice was on her phone, her voice low but sharp enough to cut through the supermarket's generic pop music. Aaliyah froze. She should have turned the cart around. She should have retreated to the frozen food section. But curiosity is a heavy anchor. I know, but he's been so distracted lately, Shanice said into her phone, tossing a hand-braided loaf into her basket. It's always about the kids now. Every weekend he's with them. I try to be supportive, I really do, but I barely see him anymore. Erilyn tugged at Aaliyah's sleeve. Mama, can we get the cookies? Aaliyah held up a single finger, her eyes locked on the back of Shanice's perfectly highlighted hair. 1 minute, baby, she whispered. I just think it's weird that he's suddenly so involved. Shanice continued, her tone bordering on a sneer. Where was this energy before? They were fine without him for years. Now he's restructuring his entire life around a woman who clearly doesn't even want him back. Shanice let out a soft, mocking laugh. Right? It's like he's playing house with his ex. He needs to figure out what he actually wants instead of chasing a ghost. The words hit Aaliyah like a physical blow. Playing house. The image flashed through her mind. Aaron sitting on her living room floor. Aaron texting her about nap schedules. Aaron asking if Aiden's cough needed a doctor. Was that what the world saw? A desperate man trying to buy his way back into a life he had discarded? Mama, the cookies, Abe shouted, his voice echoing off the cereal boxes. The sound broke the spell. Shanice turned her head slightly, and Aaliyah instinctively ducked behind a display of crackers. She gripped the handle of the cart until her knuckles turned white. Her stomach felt hollow. She finished the shopping on autopilot. She paid, loaded the kids into the van, and drove home in a silence so thick it felt like fog. By 2 o'clock, the house was finally quiet. The kids were down for their afternoon naps. Aaliyah sat on the sofa, staring at the blank television screen. She had been so sure of her boundaries. She had told Aaron there was no us. But had she left the door cracked open by letting him in so easily? Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. The caller ID made her breath hitch. Aaron. She let it ring 3 times before picking up. Hey, she said, her voice sounding thin to her own ears. Hey, Aaliyah. Listen, Aaron started. He sounded rushed. The background noise of a busy office hummed behind him. I know it's short notice, but something came up at work. I was supposed to take Abe and Abigail to the zoo on Saturday, but I've got to fly to Chicago for an investor meeting. Aaliyah closed her eyes. There it was. The old Aaron. The man who chose the boardroom over the playroom every single time. Okay, Aaliyah said. Thanks for letting me know. I'm really sorry. I know they were excited. They're 3, Aaron. They'll get over it. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Aaliyah could hear him breathing. You sound off, Aaron said quietly. Is everything okay? Aaliyah felt a spark of irritation flare in her chest. During their marriage, Aaron couldn't see a crisis if it was staring him in the face. Yet now he was an expert on her tone of voice. I'm fine. Just tired, she lied. Aaliyah, talk to me. What's going on? She let out a sharp, jagged laugh. That's rich, Aaron. Really? You asking me to talk to you? What does that mean? It means it's ironic. Aaliyah snapped, standing up and pacing the small rug. Our entire marriage was me trying to talk and you being too busy to listen. And now you're calling me from your office to check on my feelings. I know I wasn't good at it back then. Aaron's voice was steady, devoid of the usual billionaire bravado. I'm trying to be better. Why? Aaliyah demanded. And don't say it's for the kids. You can be a good father without calling me to see if I'm off. You can parent without restructuring your entire world. So what are you actually doing here? The silence stretched for 5, 6, 7 seconds. I don't know, Aaron finally admitted. I see you with them. I see what you built alone, and I just keep thinking about how badly I messed up. I guess I'm trying to figure out if there's any way to fix it. To go back, maybe. You can't go back, Aaron, Aaliyah said, her voice trembling. That's not how time works. I'm not the woman I was when we were married. I don't need what I needed then. What do you need now? The question was raw. It wasn't a negotiation or a business pitch. It was a plea. Aaliyah leaned her forehead against the cool glass of the window. I need you to be their father. Just that. Nothing more. And if you want more, that's your problem, not mine. That's harsh, he exhaled. It's honest. I don't have the energy to manage your guilt while I'm raising 4 children. If you want to be in their lives, be in their lives. But don't use them as a bridge to get back to me. It's not fair. Silence followed. Aaliyah expected him to hang up. She expected him to get defensive, to remind her of everything he provided. Instead, his voice came back softer than before. You're right, Aaron said. I've been telling myself it was only about the kids, but there's more to it. And you're right, that's not fair to you. I'm sorry. Aaliyah felt the air leave her lungs. She was prepared for a fight, not an apology. I really do want to be their dad, Aaron continued. Not perfectly. I know I'll screw up, but I want to try. If that's all you're offering, then I'll take it. And Aaliyah? I'll move the Chicago meeting. I'll make the zoo trip happen next weekend. The kids shouldn't pay for my schedule. He hung up before she could respond. Aaliyah stared at the phone. She had set a boundary, and for the first time in his life, Aaron had respected it. It should have felt like a victory. It should have felt like progress. Instead, a new fear took root in her chest. As long as Aaron was the selfish man who didn't listen, she was safe. She knew how to survive that man. But if he actually became the person he was promising to be, if he actually started to listen, that was a much more dangerous story. The zoo trip was a success. Aaron picked up Abigail and Abe exactly when he said he would. He brought them back exactly when he promised. Both kids were full of stories about penguins and ice cream. They told Aaliyah how their daddy let them feed the goats. Erilyn and Aiden stayed home with Aaliyah. They were predictably jealous. Aaliyah promised they would get their turn next weekend. The pattern continued. Aaron showed up. He took them places. He built inside jokes and learned their rhythms. Aaron stopped canceling his plans. He started keeping a calendar specifically for kid-related commitments. He even color-coded it by child. Aaliyah watched it happen. She felt a complicated mix of relief and something she could not quite name. The relief was easy to understand. Her children finally had a father who actually showed up. Whatever Aaron was working through, the result was 4 kids who were starting to trust him. They believed that when their daddy said he would be there, he would be there. Underneath that relief was a quiet discomfort. Aaliyah built her entire identity over the last 3 years on a single foundation. She was enough by herself. She did not need him. Now, Aaron was there sharing the load. A small part of her felt destabilized. Aaliyah did not want him back. That had not changed. She did not love him. She did not miss the life they once had. But she was used to her life being entirely hers. Her decisions. Her rules. Her story. Now, Aaron was a character in it again. During one of his weekend visits, Aaron took all 4 children. Aaliyah was not sure if he was brave or foolish. She found herself with an afternoon entirely alone. She could not remember the last time that happened. She planned to clean. There was always cleaning to do. But standing in her quiet house, Aaliyah just sat on the couch. The silence was disorienting. She tried to read. She tried to watch a show. She ended up just listening to the absence of noise. Her phone buzzed. It was a photo from Aaron. All 4 kids were covered in chocolate. They grinned at the camera. The text from Aaron read, "Help. I think I made a mistake." Aaliyah smiled despite herself. She texted back, "What happened? Ice cream sundae bar was a bad idea. Aaron replied. Your children have no self-control. They are 3, Aaliyah typed. And they are your children, too. Fair point, Aaron sent back. Another photo came through. This one was just Aiden holding Aaron's hand. The boy looked up at his father with complete trust. Aaliyah stared at the photo for a long time. This was what she wanted. She wanted her kids to have a father. She wanted Aaron to be present. So why did her chest feel tight? Aaliyah was still sitting there with her phone when a knock sounded at the door. Her first thought was that Aaron brought the kids back early. Maybe someone had a meltdown. Maybe someone got hurt. She opened the door already calculating the injury. It was not Aaron. It was Shanice. Aaron's girlfriend stood on the porch. She looked perfectly put together in casual clothes. She wore a smile that did not reach her eyes. Hi, Shanice said. I am sorry to just show up. I am Shanice. We met briefly at the park. Aaliyah stood in the doorway. She did not invite the woman in. I remember. Can I help you with something? I was hoping we could talk just for a minute, Shanice said. It is about Aaron. Of course it was. Aaliyah considered closing the door. This was not her problem. It was not her business. But curiosity won. Okay, Aaliyah said. She stepped aside. Shanice walked in. She looked around the small house. She took in the toys and the clutter. It was lived-in chaos. Aaliyah was no longer embarrassed by it. Can I get you something? Water? Coffee? Aaliyah asked. No, thank you. I will not take much of your time, Shanice said. She perched on the edge of the couch. She looked afraid to fully sit down. I wanted to talk to you about Aaron. Aaliyah sat in the armchair across from her. She waited. He has been spending a lot of time here with the kids, Shanice began. I think that is great. Kids should know their father. But, Shanice's smile flickered. But I am worried he is confusing things. Confusing things? Aaliyah asked. He is getting caught up in a fantasy, Shanice said. He is looking at what could have been instead of accepting what is. You two are divorced. You have moved on. He needs to move on, too. He is using the kids as an excuse to stay connected to you. Aaliyah felt something cold settle in her stomach. The kids are not an excuse. They are his children. He has a right to build relationships with them. Of course, Shanice replied. But there are boundaries. He does not need to be here all the time. He does not need to call you about every little thing. He is using co-parenting to stay in your life. That is between you and Aaron, Aaliyah said. Is it? Shanice leaned forward. From where I am sitting, you are encouraging it. You let him be here. You let him play happy family when you know it is not going anywhere. That is not fair to him. Anger flashed through Aaliyah. It was bright and hot. Not fair to him. Aaliyah kept her voice level, but it was a struggle. I have been raising 4 children alone for 3 years. Aaron showed up on my doorstep asking for a second chance. I told him no. I told him explicitly that there was no romantic possibility. I let him be part of the kids' lives because they deserve a father. I am not encouraging anything. I am co-parenting. Aaliyah stood up. I am doing what is best for my children. Sometimes that means coordinating with their father. If Aaron has confused that for something else, that is his issue to work through. It is not mine to manage. Shanice's expression went cold. So, you are saying you have no responsibility for his feelings? You aren't leading him on. I am saying I have been nothing but honest with him, Aaliyah said. What he chooses to do with that honesty is his choice. They stared at each other across the living room. You still love him, Shanice said quietly. That is what this is really about. You cannot let him go. Aaliyah almost laughed. I left him. I filed for divorce while pregnant with his children because being married to him was destroying me. I do not love him. I do not want him back. Honestly, this conversation makes me very clear on why I am glad I left. What is that supposed to mean? Shanice snapped. It means you came to my house to tell me how to manage my relationship with my children's father, Aaliyah said. You came here to ask me to be less available to my kids, so your relationship is easier. That is not something a secure person does. Shanice stood up quickly. I came here to have an honest conversation. No, Aaliyah countered. You came here to mark your territory. But here is the thing, Shanice. I am not in the territory. I left it 3 years ago. Shanice opened her mouth to speak, but the sound of a car pulling into the driveway cut her off. It was Aaron's SUV. The kids were back. Aaliyah looked at the door, then back at Shanice. The kids are here. You should probably go out the back way if you don't want Aaron to see you here. Shanice didn't move. She straightened her coat. No, she whispered. Let him see. The front door clicked shut, leaving Aaliyah in a silence that felt heavier than the shouting match she just endured. Shanice was gone, but her words lingered like a bad scent in the air. He's obsessed with you. Aaliyah sat on the edge of her faded sofa. Her fingers trembled as she reached for her phone. Adrenaline pulsed through her veins, hot and bitter. She didn't hesitate. She typed a message to Aaron, her thumbs flying over the screen. Your girlfriend just left my house. We need to talk. The reply came in under 5 seconds. Aaron was always on his phone, always tethered to the world. What? Shanice was at your house. Aaliyah stared at the blue bubble. She didn't care about his shock. She cared about her peace. She typed back, yes. You need to figure out what you're doing. I can't have people showing up here trying to negotiate boundaries on your behalf. The phone vibrated in her hand. Aaron was calling. Aaliyah watched the screen glow, the caller ID flashing his name. She let it go to voicemail. She wasn't ready to hear his voice, the smooth, persuasive tone that always tried to find a middle ground where none existed. She sent one final text. I meant what I said. The kids are yours to be with as much as you want. But you need to be clear with everyone in your life about what we are and aren't. I can't do this if it comes with drama. 3 typing bubbles appeared. They danced, vanished, then reappeared. Finally, Aaron's response landed. I'm so sorry. I'll handle it. This won't happen again. Aaliyah set the phone face down. Outside the window, the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long, orange shadows across the living room. The quiet was a luxury, a brief window before the storm of 4 toddlers returned. She knew the routine by heart. Bedtime, snacks, the exhausting work of being everything to 4 tiny people. But as she sat there, Aaliyah felt the weight of Shanice's visit. Aaron hadn't been clear. He was leaving a door cracked open. Whether he knew it or not, he was still playing the role of the man who hadn't let go. A car pulled into the gravel driveway. Doors slammed. High-pitched voices rose in the air, the sound of children who were overtired and crashing from a sugar high. Aaliyah stood up. She smoothed her shirt and took a deep breath. Whatever conversation she needed to have with Aaron would have to wait. Right now, she had a job to do. The kids tumbled through the door. They were a whirlwind of sticky hands and tangled hair. They clung to Aaron's legs for a second before migrating toward Aaliyah like iron filings to a magnet. Aaron stood in the doorway looking harried. There was a chocolate stain on his expensive white shirt. His hair, usually perfectly styled, was a mess. He held out a bag of souvenirs and jackets. His eyes met Aaliyah's. He looked like he wanted to apologize right there. He looked like he wanted to explain Shanice away. But the kids were screaming about snacks and toys. The moment was gone. I will handle it, Aaron whispered over the noise. Aaliyah took the bags from him. We need to talk, she said, her voice firm. Not now, but soon. Aaron nodded. He looked relieved. That relief made Aaliyah's stomach turn. He was still expecting her to manage the fallout of his messy life. 3 days later, the house was empty. The kids were with the sitter. Aaliyah sat in her armchair, creating a physical gap between her and the couch where Aaron sat. Aaron looked nervous. He sat on the edge of the cushion, hands clasped between his knees. He looked like a man waiting for a sentence to be handed down. Shanice came to see me. Aaliyah started. Aaron flinched. I know. She told me. And what did you tell her? I told her she was out of line, Aaron said quickly. I told her to stay out of our co-parenting. Aaliyah watched him. She didn't blink. And Aaron sighed, picking at a loose thread on his jeans. She's upset. She feels like I'm prioritizing you over her. I am the mother of your children, Aaliyah snapped. She is your girlfriend. There is no competition unless you create one. I know that. I told her that. Aaron's voice rose, then dropped just as fast. Then why does she feel threatened, Aaron? Why is she standing in my living room telling me you're obsessed with me? Aaron looked down at his hands. The silence in the house was deafening. No cartoons. No toys. Just the hum of the fridge. Because I haven't been clear, Aaron admitted quietly. About what? About us. About where we stand. She thinks I'm trying to get back together with you. Aaliyah felt the air leave the room. She leaned forward. Are you? The question hung there, sharp and unavoidable. Aaron looked up. For a second, the old Aaron was back. The billionaire negotiator, the man who always found a loophole. He looked like he was about to say something safe, something like we're figuring it out. But he stopped. He looked at the woman who had built a life without his money or his name. No, he said. I'm not. Then tell her that, Aaliyah said. I have. She doesn't believe me. That's because your actions don't match your words, Aaron. You call me every day. You text me about things that aren't the kids. You've restructured your entire life around a schedule that looks more like a marriage than a custody deal. I'm trying to be involved. Aaron defended. You're trying to be close, Aaliyah corrected. There is a difference. You can be a father without being my partner, but you're blurring the lines. And now people are getting hurt. Aaron went silent again. He looked smaller than usual. The power he held in boardrooms didn't mean anything in this quiet living room. I don't know how to do this, he whispered. I don't know how to be their dad without being close to you. Aaron stood in the center of the kitchen, looking like a man who had just been stripped of his armor. Aaliyah watched him. She didn't feel the old spark of anger. Instead, she felt a dull ache of pity, not for their failed marriage, but for the man standing in front of her. He was right about one thing. Aaliyah was the bridge. She held the keys to everything. The kids' favorite bedtime stories, the exact way Aiden liked his crusts cut, and the medicine Erilyn needed when her fever spiked at midnight. She was the blueprint for his new life. You don't need me to be close to them, Aaliyah said. Her voice was steady, like a judge delivering a final verdict. You need to know them directly, not through me. Aaron blinked. How? By spending time with them without me there, Aaliyah said. She crossed her arms. By learning their rhythms yourself. You have to make mistakes and fix them without calling me to troubleshoot. Aaron flinched. He looked like she'd slapped him across the face. I don't mean to do that. I know you don't, Aaliyah replied. But that's what happens. You treat me like the manager and yourself like a consultant. It looks that way to Shanice, too. It makes us look like we're still a unit. And we aren't. Aaron's shoulders slumped. He looked small in the expensive suit. So what do I do? You figure it out, Aaliyah said. Stop calling me for non-emergencies. Stop asking me to validate your parenting. Stop looking at me like I hold the keys to your happiness. Aaron looked down at his shoes. He nodded slowly, a heavy, rhythmic movement. Okay, he whispered. And you tell Shanice the truth, Aaliyah added. Not the nice version. The real one. Tell her you messed up. Tell her there is no us anymore. Aaron looked up. His eyes were wet, glistening under the kitchen lights. It hurts to hear you say that. Aaliyah felt her own throat tighten. She swallowed the emotion hard. She couldn't let it out. Not now. I know, but it's the truth. If you don't hear it, you're going to keep hurting everyone, including the kids. Aaron stood up. He looked older than when he had arrived an hour ago. He looked heavier, as if the weight of his own choices was finally pressing down on his spine. I'll talk to her tonight, he said. Good. And I'll try to stop calling so much. Aaliyah didn't blink. Don't try. Just stop. If it's not an emergency, don't call. If you aren't sure if it's an emergency, don't call. Figure it out. Aaron nodded one last time. He walked to the door and stopped with his hand on the cold brass knob. Thank you, he said, for being honest. Aaliyah didn't answer. She just watched him. She watched his back as he walked out into the night. When the door clicked shut, Aaliyah let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. It was over. The boundary was set. It wasn't a punishment. It was clarity. She walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. She stood at the counter, staring out the window at the dark backyard. The swing set was still. The grass was getting long. The world looked ordinary, but everything had changed. She was free. Not free from Aaron. They would always share biology and history, but free from the expectation of him. She was free from the burden of managing his growth. He would grow or he wouldn't. It wasn't her job to watch anymore. The weeks that followed were quiet. Surprisingly quiet. Aaron kept his word. The phone stayed silent. When he did call, it was about logistics. He stopped canceling. He showed up with more confidence. Shanice was gone, vanished from the narrative like a ghost. The children thrived. They started asking for daddy more. They talked about the zoo, the museums, and the ducks at the park. Aaliyah listened and smiled. She felt a profound sense of relief. This was the goal. But in the quiet moments, a new feeling crept in. One night, while folding laundry at midnight, Aaliyah stopped. The house was too still. She had fought for independence. She had won her sovereignty. But it was lonely. It wasn't the desperate loneliness of the early days. It was a structural loneliness. She was the only adult in the room. She was the only decision maker. She missed having a partner. Not Aaron. Never Aaron again. But someone to share the load. Someone to bring her a glass of water when the kids were all sick with the flu. She pushed the thought away. It was dangerous. She turned her focus to her notebooks. She began to write essays about motherhood, essays about how women disappear into their roles, She didn't show them to anyone, but the ink on the page was proof that she existed outside of being an ex-wife. Then, the phone rang on a Tuesday. It was a call, not a text. "There's an event," Aaron's voice said. He sounded professional. "At the company. A gala for the anniversary of the merger." Aaliyah kept chopping carrots. "Okay, I want you to come with the kids," Aaron said. Aaliyah stopped the knife. She put it down on the wooden board. "Why?" "Because I want them to see where I work. I want them to be part of this." "Aaron, they are 3 years old. They don't care about a merger." "They will someday," Aaron insisted. "I want them to know this is their heritage." Aaliyah wiped her hands on a towel. She leaned against the counter, her eyes narrowing. "This isn't about them, Aaron. It's about you. You want to show them off. You want to show me off." The line went silent. "You want to walk into a room of billionaires and present the complete family package," Aaliyah said. "Am I wrong?" "No," Aaron admitted. "You aren't wrong." "Then why ask?" "Because it's important for people to see them," Aaron said. "To acknowledge them." Aaliyah closed her eyes. She knew the truth. Most of those people didn't even know Aaron had children. He had hidden them for 3 years. This wasn't about family. It was about his image. It was about proving he had fixed his life. "I'll think about it," Aaliyah said. She hung up the phone and looked at the half-chopped carrots. The piece she had built felt suddenly very fragile. The knife sliced through the carrot with a sharp, rhythmic thud. Aaliyah stared at the cutting board, but her mind was miles away. The vegetables were starting to dry out, turning pale and limp under the kitchen lights. She looked at her phone. The timer on her life felt like it was ticking down. Aaron wanted her there. He wanted the children there. Aaliyah knew it was a trap. It wasn't a trap with jagged teeth, but it was a trap nonetheless. If she stepped into that ballroom, she stepped into his world. She became a character in the story he told the public. A story where he was the hero. She looked at the hallway where the children played. They always asked about Daddy's work. They wondered why he wore such shiny shoes and why he always disappeared into tall, glass buildings. Maybe they needed to see it. Maybe if they saw the marble floors and the cold statues, they would realize he wasn't a magician. He was just a man in a suit. Aaliyah grabbed the phone and dialed Aaron back. 1 hour, Aaliyah said, her voice like flint. "We come early, before the speeches start." "Aaliyah, thank you." Aaron's voice was warm, but she didn't trust it. "I'm not wearing a gown, Aaron. I'm not playing the trophy ex-wife. And when I say it's time to leave, we leave. No pressure to stay for the program. Whatever you want," he promised. "And one more thing. If anyone asks, you tell the truth. No spin. We are co-parents. That is it." There was a long pause on the other end. Aaliyah heard him draw a breath, a slight hesitation that made her stomach turn. "Okay," Aaron finally said. Aaliyah didn't believe him for a second. The Grand Regency Hotel ballroom was a sea of excess. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen rain. Waiters in white gloves moved through the crowd, carrying silver trays of hors d'oeuvres that cost more than Aaliyah's monthly groceries. Aaliyah felt the stares the moment she stepped through the heavy oak doors. She wore a simple navy blue dress and sensible shoes. Her hair was pulled back in a tight, neat knot. She looked like a mother ready for a long day. Aaron, however, looked like a king. His tuxedo was tailored to perfection. His hair was slicked back, and he wore a smile that was practiced for the cameras. The whispers started immediately. Necks craned, eyes narrowed. Aaliyah kept her hand firmly on Erilyn's shoulder. She kept the kids close, moving through the room like a ship cutting through choppy water. Aaron beamed as he introduced the children to a group of investors. "This is Aiden, and this is Abigail," he said, his voice booming with pride. Aaliyah smiled politely, but kept her answers short. "Yes, they are 3, she told a woman draped in diamonds. "No, it hasn't been easy," she said to a man who looked like he had never changed a diaper in his life. She felt the judgment. She saw the women in floor-length gowns looking at her simple dress with pity. She saw the men calculating Aaron's net worth and wondering if this was a reconciliation. Then she saw her. Shanice stood near the bar, surrounded by a group of admirers. Her red dress was a splash of blood against the white decor. Her jewelry caught the light with every move. Shanice's eyes locked onto Aaliyah's. Her expression was cold. It wasn't just dislike, it was a total dismissal. Aaliyah looked away. She didn't have the energy for a high-society catfight. 40 minutes had passed. The air in the room was getting heavy with perfume and expensive gin. The noise was a dull roar that made the kids jumpy. Aiden was rubbing his eyes, his face turning a telltale shade of pink. Abigail was clinging to Aaliyah's leg, hiding her face in the navy fabric. "Time to go," Aaliyah whispered to Aaron. Aaron's smile faltered. "We haven't even done the toast yet. Just 10 more minutes, Aaliyah. Please." "No, Aaron. They are done. We're leaving." Aaliyah turned to gather the kids, but a hand caught her arm. It was an older woman, elegant and sharp-eyed. Felicia, the wife of a powerful board member. "Aaliyah, dear," Felicia said, her voice loud enough to draw a small crowd. "I'm so glad Aaron finally acknowledged these beautiful children. It must have been so difficult, raising quadruplets while he kept them secret for their protection." The words hit Aaliyah like a physical blow. Kept them secret? As if she had been hiding in the shadows. As if Aaron had made a noble choice to shield them. As if she hadn't been erased from his life for 3 long years. Aaliyah looked at Felicia. Then she looked at the circle of people waiting for her response. Finally, she looked at Aaron. He was standing right there. He heard every word. And he was smiling. He was letting the lie hang in the air because it made him look like a protective father instead of a man who had walked away. Something inside Aaliyah snapped. It wasn't a loud break. It was a quiet, crystalline clarity. "I didn't hide them," Aaliyah said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was clear. It cut through the murmur of the ballroom like a knife. Felicia blinked, her smile freezing. "I didn't mean. I filed for divorce while I was pregnant." Aaliyah continued, her gaze steady. "I raised them alone for 3 years. Aaron wasn't involved because he chose not to be. Not because of a secret." The room went dead silent. A waiter stopped mid-stride. Aaron stepped forward, his face turning the color of ash. "Aaliyah," he hissed. "Not now." "Yes, now," Aaliyah said. She turned back to Felicia and the growing crowd. "He paid child support. He visited once in a while. No, he didn't know their names. He didn't know their birthdays. He didn't know them at all." She turned her eyes to Aaron. He looked shattered, the mask of the perfect billionaire crumbling in front of his peers. "I'm glad he's building a relationship with them now," Aaliyah said, her voice iron-strong. "But I will not let him rewrite the past. I will not let him pretend he was there when he wasn't." She didn't wait for a reply. She grabbed Aiden's hand and scooped up Abigail. "We're leaving," she told Aaron. Aaliyah walked through the silent ballroom. She didn't look back at the whispers that were surely exploding behind her. She didn't look at Shanice's shocked face. She got the kids into the car and buckled them into their seats. The drive home was silent. The only sound was the soft breathing of the children as they drifted off to sleep. Once they were home, she tucked them in and kissed each of their foreheads. The house was quiet, a stark contrast to the golden roar of the hotel. Aaliyah sat down on the floor of the hallway and let out a breath. Then, the tears came. She wasn't crying because she was sad. She wasn't even angry anymore. She was just tired. She was tired of fighting for the truth. She was tired of being the only one who remembered how hard the last 3 years had been. She cried until her chest ached and her eyes were swollen shut. When there was nothing left, she stood up. She washed her face with cold water and went to the kitchen to make tea. Her phone buzzed on the table. "Aaron, I'm sorry. I didn't know she would say that. I should have corrected her." Aaliyah read it and set the phone back down. She didn't reply. Another buzz. "Aaron, you were right. I let it happen. I wanted them to see us as a family. I wanted to look good. I'm sorry." Aaliyah looked out the window. Outside, the first flakes of snow were starting to fall. They were soft and quiet, covering the dark world in a layer of white. She felt a shift inside her. Something final. She had spoken the truth in the one place Aaron feared it most. The story was hers again. Aaliyah finished her tea. The porcelain felt warm against her palms. She washed the cup and dried it with a slow, steady hand. There was no going back now. No rewriting the past. No smoothing over the rough edges of what had been said. The story was finally out, and for the first time in years, it belonged to her. She went to bed and fell into a deep, heavy sleep. She didn't wake up to check the baby monitor. She didn't toss and turn over what tomorrow might bring. Aaliyah already knew. Tomorrow would bring the smell of breakfast and the mountain of laundry that never seemed to end. It would bring the chaotic noise of 4 growing children. But beneath the noise, there was peace. She had nothing left to prove to anyone. The next morning, the shift in the air was palpable. The news didn't hit the television screens, but it rippled through the circles that mattered. Aaron's colleagues whispered in glass boardrooms. His friends went silent when his name came up. The story spread like a slow-moving fire. Everyone knew about the billionaire CEO who had walked away from his family. They knew about the woman who raised quadruplets in the shadows while he built an empire on the image of a devoted family man. Aaron didn't call. He didn't send a frantic text or try to barge through her front door. He gave her space. A week passed before a thick, cream-colored envelope arrived in the mail. The address was written in Aaron's sharp, familiar handwriting. Aaliyah sat at the kitchen table and broke the seal. "Aaliyah," the letter began. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything at all. But I had to tell you that what you said was true. I needed to hear it. More than that, I needed everyone else to hear it too." Aaliyah traced the ink with her thumb. Aaron confessed to living a lie, not just about her, but about himself. He wrote about the trap of success. He thought being a titan meant never admitting a fault or letting the narrative crack. "You cracked it," the letter continued. "And I'm grateful. I'm stepping back from the board. I'm stepping away from being the public face of this company. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not performing. I'll be a father. I'll show up. But I won't ask you to validate me anymore. Thank you for the truth, even when it hurt." Aaliyah read the words twice. She folded the paper carefully and placed it in the back of a junk drawer. She didn't frame it as a trophy, but she didn't throw it away either. It was just evidence of a moment. A receipt for a debt finally acknowledged. She walked into the living room. The quadruplets were sprawled across the rug, building a tower out of wooden blocks. The structure was wobbly and leaned precariously to the left. It was imperfect. To Aaliyah, it was beautiful. She sat on the floor beside them. Aiden held out a bright blue block with a wide grin. Aaliyah took it and placed it right on top. The tower swayed, but it stood. She felt the weight of the last few years finally lift off her shoulders. She wasn't the ex-wife anymore. She wasn't the victim or the woman fighting for a seat at the table. She was just Aaliyah, and that was more than enough. 2 weeks later, a simple message appeared on her phone. Aaron wanted to meet. No kids. No agenda. No lawyers. Aaliyah agreed. She felt a flicker of curiosity, a quiet need to see the man who had written that letter. They met at the park near the edge of town. It was late autumn now. The trees stood bare against a gray sky, and the wind carried a sharp, wintry bite. Aaliyah arrived in a thick, practical coat. She looked tired, but her eyes were clear. Aaron was already there, leaning against a bench. He looked smaller than she remembered. The expensive suit was gone, replaced by a simple sweater. He looked like a man carrying a weight that had finally become too heavy to hold. He didn't start with an apology. He knew Aaliyah didn't want a performance. Instead, he looked out at the empty playground. "Seeing you walk away from that event changed things," Aaron said. His voice was low. "You were so calm. You didn't care about my money or my reputation. You weren't part of my script anymore." He admitted the truth. He had built an empire, but it felt hollow. He had filled his life with trophies, but had no one to share them with. Not in a way that was real. He told her he envied her. "I'm not saying I'd trade it all for a small house," Aaron said, a flash of his old pride showing. "But I envy your freedom. You built something that actually matters. You know who you are without the title. I don't." Aaliyah listened. She didn't reach out to comfort him. She didn't tell him it would be okay. She just let the silence sit between them in the cold air. "So what happens now?" Aaliyah asked. Aaron looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in years. "Now, I stopped trying to own the story. I just try to be in it." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. He didn't open it. He just set it on the bench between them. "This isn't a bribe," he whispered. "It's a choice. And for the first time, the choice is entirely yours." Aaliyah looked at the box, then back at the man who had once been her entire world. The wind whistled through the bare branches above them. The tower she had built with her children was safe at home, but the one between her and Aaron was still just a pile of scattered blocks. The cold wind whips around the corner of the glass office tower. Aaliyah pulls her coat tighter. She doesn't look at the height of the building. She looks at Aaron. He stands by his black sedan. He looks like a man who owns the city, but his eyes tell a different story. They look empty. Aaron clears his throat. He wants a map. He wants Aaliyah to tell him how to be a father. He wants a checklist. Aaliyah shakes her head. She doesn't owe him a guide. She doesn't owe him her labor. She offers him one thing. It is a gift he didn't expect. She offers him the truth. "You can be a good father, Aaron," Aaliyah says. Her voice is steady. It doesn't shake. But you have to choose it. The children are still young. You can still build something real with them. Aaron steps closer. He smells like expensive cologne and stress. How, he asks. You have to do something you've never done, Aaliyah says. Show up. Don't try to be impressive. Don't try to control the story. Just love them. Don't look for credit. Aaron looks down at his polished shoes. Will you help me? Will you show me how to talk to them? Aaliyah takes a step back. This is the moment. She feels the old urge to fix him. She feels the urge to make things smooth. She kills that urge. No, Aaliyah says. I won't manage your growth. I won't coach you through your feelings. If you do the work, I won't stand in your way. But the work is yours. Aaron looks up. His face looks pale in the street lights. Do you think I can do it? Aaliyah pauses. She looks at the man she used to love. She looks at the man who tried to own her. I don't know, Aaliyah says. The words are like a glass wall. They are clear. They are hard. They are final. That's not my question to answer anymore, she adds. She is not angry. She is not cruel. She is just finished. She isn't responsible for his redemption. She isn't responsible for his happiness. She is only responsible for herself and her children. Goodbye, Aaron, she says. She turns and walks away. She doesn't look back. Aaron stands by his car. He watches her disappear into the crowd. He gets into the driver's seat. He sits in the dark. He stares at the dashboard. He has billions of dollars. He has power over thousands of people. But he just realized something. All that power means nothing. It means nothing against a woman who doesn't need him. Aaliyah drives home. The heater in her car hums. She pulls into the driveway. She hears the noise before she opens the door. It is the sound of life. She walks inside. It is chaos. For toddlers are running. Toys cover the floor. The babysitter looks like she just finished a marathon. I'm back, Aaliyah says. The babysitter sighs with relief. Aaliyah takes over. She isn't a trophy wife here. She isn't a footnote. She is the center of the world. She makes dinner. She stops a fight over a plastic truck. She runs the baths. The water splashes on her shirt. She doesn't care. She reads the stories. She kisses the foreheads. She tucks them in, one by one. Each child has a ritual. Each child has a need. Aaliyah meets them all. 3 years ago, she felt like a ghost. Today, she feels whole. She isn't the gracious wife anymore. She isn't the woman people ignore at parties. She is Aaliyah. She is tired. She is messy. She is real. The house goes quiet. The children are asleep. Aaliyah goes to the kitchen. She makes a cup of tea. She sits at the wooden table. She opens her laptop. The screen glows in the dark room. She starts to type. She writes about being a mother. She writes about finding her voice. She writes about the days she wanted to give up. She doesn't know if anyone will read it. She doesn't care. The point isn't the audience. The point is the voice. It exists on the page. It exists in her home. No one can edit her life anymore. Only her. She looks out the window. The first snow of the year starts to fall. It is soft. It is quiet. It covers the dirty street in white. It makes everything look new. Aaliyah smiles. She turns back to the screen. Across the city, Aaron sits in his penthouse. The walls are made of glass. The furniture costs more than a house. The silence is heavy. He stares at his phone. He wants to call her. He doesn't. He has to figure out who he is. He has to do it alone. No one is watching him. No one is cheering for him. That is his story now. But this story belongs to Aaliyah. She is no longer waiting for a happy ending. She is busy writing her own. If you felt the heat of that ballroom confrontation or cheered for Aaliyah standing her ground, then you definitely love this story. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss a chapter. Comment below with your thoughts. Did Aaron deserve a second chance? Or was Aaliyah right to walk away? Like and share this video to help us grow our community. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.